Hello and welcome to the Order 66 Sons of the Order podcast. This is episode 7. My name is Lainey.
And I'm Chuck.
I'm Joey.
I'm Liam.
Jeff.
Robert.
Hi, folks. I'm James, and that's my son, Robert. Come on closer to the microphone, Robert. Say hello.
Closer.
Hello. Hello.
Closer.
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 Okay.
Okay, that was awkward.
That was no. That's all right. We're all new to this. He's my puppet today, so.
We've had a particularly rowdy pre-show today, so I think everybody's a little amped
It'll
up.
be available on the Pay site later.
Welcome to episode 7, folks. The Force Awakens.
Wow.
I'm John Boyega.
When did it fall asleep is what I want to know.
Sometime between 83 and now.
That's going to be explained in
For
the new
about,
Star Wars TV show.
About 33 years there, I guess.
Yeah,
It was during the Senate scenes in Phantom Menace.
Oh, like we said earlier, welcome to Order 66 Toys. We're located at 111 South Chestnut in beautiful downtown McKinney, Texas.
It's actually sunny today, so you can
It is
say
sunny.
sunny McKinney, Texas.
It was not very nice
Well,
today.
I cut that out before. So.
It's always sunny in McKinney.
That should be a TV show. It's always sunny someplace.
No, they already did that in Philadelphia. I
They
believe.
did that? Okay.
You know, we've gone from episode 6, where it was just our wonderful producer, George Martin, or Joey, and Chuck and myself, and now we have a full room of idiots. So it's good that we got to. Oh, okay.
It's called escalation.
Okay.
I mean, it's good to have you back, though, really, because, you know, it wasn't cool that you were ill the last
I
time.
know. I'm so sorry. I was really sick and I couldn't make it. I wouldn't have sounded all that great, to be quite honest with you.
Hungover.
I'm back too.
Yeah, I wish.
Yes, there'll be no escape for you this time.
Nobody's sorry Liam isn't here, though.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go back to my cage.
What are you doing here, Liam?
They just found me on the street. I was begging for Vlix.
We found Liam in a Sears box outside the back of Target.
It's like Diddy from the room.
Oh, today.
What's our topic?
What's our topic for the day? Yes.
Not the room.
What makes an action figure valuable? So this is a question that we're asked all the time at Order 66 Toys. Would anyone care to kick this off?
Rule number 1, don't open it.
Don't open
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a major part of it
Or
because
get everyone else to open it, and you don't.
yeah, well, because like back in the '70s, it wasn't like a thing where you had people just buying massive collections of these characters and then just keeping them in the boxes. I mean, there was a time when it was just so hard to find them that the people who bought them were kids and they were interested in playing with them. And like we get collections that come in here all the time. Like there was a gentleman a few weeks ago that bought, maybe 200 figures from like the last 10 years, and they were all in great condition. But there's just, there's so many of them. There's so many collectors out there today, and back then there wasn't as much competition like that.
Well said, Liam.
Thank you, sir. That's
I love the 70s, too.
yeah,
It was great. It was a good
yeah.
Well,
you got,
I mean,
you got Taxi Driver.
But adults in the 70s, adults are more kid-like today than they were in the 70s. I mean, adults, my grandparents were Depression era. My mom was born during the Depression. Collecting toys and things of that nature seemed very silly to them.
Well, that's
And but now today, and I'm not knocking today's adults. I think it's fantastic that they're collecting and all, but the collecting side wasn't as prominent back then. I know, Jeff, you were collecting comics back in the '70s and doing very well with that, but it seemed like adults were a lot more serious about certain things back then.
I think they had to be. The economy was different. There was not as much available expendable funds.
Yeah.
Nowadays, well, I always like to start off the evening with a joke. And it's not really a joke, but
Oh,
it's
no.
Here we go.
oh no, here we go. Bob's mother. Wow.
Thank God.
Once.
No, this is not Bob's
joke is
mother.
it?
Well,
I had a joke
it's
once.
it's a classic saying that I use at the store all the time. What do you call a nerd when he gets older?
Doctor,
lawyer,
Doctor, lawyer.
Professor.
Yes, you guys have heard this before.
Yeah.
Jeff, yes.
Owner of
But-
Order 66 Toys.
Yeah, but what that means to me is these people that grew up in the 70s were in college in the 70s and 80s. Now, at the age of 40, 50 years old,
Yeah.
they have families. They have nice cars. They have houses.
Yep.
The kids are going off to college. And what do they have? They have expendable income. And these people that were enjoying these movies, such as Star Wars in 77 to 83, 84, this is something that they're willing to invest their money into now because they're buying back part of their childhood. And with that in mind, that's why this is such a great commodity.
But don't you think that a big part of that is pop culture, that us finding ourselves as a nation, defining ourselves as a nation? Because, I mean, we went through two major, world wars early on in the, last century. And then, by the time the 60s happened and the 70s happened, then we started to define ourselves as a culture, as an American culture. So by now, we've already established, a history of culture, that started basically in the 60s and 70s with all that kind of genre, that movie and television genre that we have now.
Well, as part of that escapism that we.
Definitely.
You think you look back at history, and I was reading an interview with Barry Gibb of the Bee Gees and talking about when they hit the disco phase in the 70s,
Which was huge for them.
and which kind of coincided about the same time with when the first Star Wars came out. And he said, basically, he said, after all the protests, after Vietnam and everything, people just wanted to dance or just to let loose because things have been too serious.
Escapism,
The
of course.
escapism. So I think historically, Star Wars hit. I mean, again, we talked about this a few podcasts ago. Star Wars hit at the right time. I mean, when it hit, it was the perfect time for it to hit.
Liam, what were the popular movies back then?
In the 70s?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, before then, we had a lot of classic films that came out, like The Godfather, Taxi Driver, Network. But Star Wars, I think, it was one of those things. It was just such a universal phenomenon that
Oh,
it
you
was.
didn't mention Jaws.
Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Or
Jaws-
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah,
That was
well,
good, right,
I'm
too.
talking about like the really popular. Like
Yeah.
Jaws is a great example in terms of the same.
I would bet that you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that was alive in the 70s that didn't see Jaws.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
yeah.
See, Jaws and Star Wars were both phenomenons in the fact of just they invented the idea of a blockbuster.
I agree.
And
Totally.
like it was just such a thing that universally and just over the country was just something that everybody had in common that they were fans. Like I remember reading something that it was in 1980 when Empire Strikes Back came out. Jimmy Carter, who was the president at that time, was holding this meeting, and one of the things he brought all the delegates of the ambassadors to do was they went and they saw Empire Strikes Back, and that was just such a great representation of American culture at the time. And I don't know if the film industry had ever seen something like that before in terms of what Star Wars did.
Well, I think we had talked about it a little bit last time. Going back to what you said, Jeff, just about the overall culture and everything at the time. Lucas, after he came off of American Graffiti, that taught. One of the things he took away from that was that the culture in general, was very much inclined to fun, those kinds of movies. And before Star Wars, Lucas was given a choice between either working with his buddy Francis Ford Coppola on Apocalypse Now, or he could branch out and try and go after this Star Wars thing that he had been kicking around for a while. And his experience with graffiti was people want something fun, and so that's what made him make that choice.
Let's kick the mic back here to Chuck real quick. In the early 70s, what was the state of toys? What was the state of toy collecting, and what was available, say in the 73 to 77 era?
As far as boys and girls, the big things were Barbie, And for boys, action figures weren't really around yet in the early 70s. There was dolls. So the biggest things that was coming out of the late 60s was G.I. Joe in 12-inch format.
Yeah.
And then a company called Miko started making dolls for all the movies. And the big things for movies, the biggest thing, especially from when I was a little kid, was Planet of the Apes. And
Definitely.
Planet of the Apes had a whole line of 8-inch dolls.
No, these
and
were still Mikos.
These were Mikos.
Right.
And they were 8-inch dolls, and they had play sets, and that was really the first thing that really grabbed you. And then it gravitated into the superheroes, into the comic books, because comic books was huge in the 60s and the 70s. And by the 70s, Marvel had really established itself as being like the A game for comic books.
Absolutely.
So Spider-Man and Hulk were at the top of their series. They had live-action TV series, the Hulk series in the late 70s. You know, it was best dramatic series. It was 5 seasons, four
Bill Bixby.
four
Bixby
seasons that
won
won
for it, yeah.
Emmys for best dramatic series, and it was awesome as a live-action TV series. And then you had Wonder Woman, you had $6 Million Man, you had ISIS and Shazam. You had so many great series that they were making dolls for. So
Absolutely.
boys were playing with dolls back in the 70s.
And then what happened?
And then the birth of the action figures. What happened is Miko started putting out small 3 3/4 figures that were not very articulated, but we really didn't see the action figure as it is now until Kenner took over and made Star Wars.
Absolutely.
And that's a whole different story on itself, because basically Miko had the chance to own the license for it. And at the last minute, they decided to go with something else called the Micronauts.
Which we'll cover.
And if you guys
That's
don't
a-
know what the Micronauts is, don't feel bad, because it really was a deadline. It was based off of a comic book. But
Right.
basically, they passed on Star Wars and said, we're going to go with the Micronauts.
Well, this is-
And
let's hold
Hasbro
this-
picked up Star Wars, and they opened a whole division called Kenner, just because Star Wars became the biggest thing. So General Mills, the folks that was making your cereal and a lot of your products that you were buying at the grocery store, is the reason why we have Star Wars figures.
which was then General Mills Food Group.
General Mills Food Group. That's right.
And I guess we need to then focus back to the original question
Absolutely.
about the what was it the figures.
What makes the action figures actually valuable?
and we have an excellent dynamic here in terms of age groups. There's you and I.
Absolutely.
We're both baby
In our
boomers
50s.
In our 50s, we've got a 16-year-old Liam, and we've got a 14-year-old, my boy Robert. We've got Lainey, who's 21. We've got a
Our
Gen
20-somethings.
Yeah, we've got a Gen Xer, Chuck, and I guess Joey, you're a Gen Xer too. You're 33. So we've got a whole lot of different perspectives that we can look at from that.
Well,
from
in 77, collecting toys was absolutely at its infancy.
yeah.
At its infancy. And the fact that something like Star Wars, a major blockbuster at the time, 77, 78, had a toy line to go with it, and especially how it was presented to the children. So, I mean, you could look for these toys. Chuck remembers how difficult it was, and we've talked about this many, many times, how you could go to a retail store and for the first time ever, an actual 3 3/4 inch toy, an action figure, was kept behind a locked case.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
And
absolutely
it was just so,
You know what's really cool about the whole original Star Wars figures? That basically TV commercial. I'm sitting at home watching Saturday morning cartoons or watching Happy Days in the evening, and basically C-3PO and Chewbacca told me to go to the store and buy Star Wars figures. The actors that played, the characters in the films actually did the TV commercials for Kenner in those early days, and basically said, go to the store and these action figures are available for you to buy. So, I mean, that helped drum up the business tremendously. But we were kids, so we opened them all. So,
absolutely.
the people that didn't is why those figures are so valuable now.
Well, the original line from 77 to 83. So when Star Wars came out, they were meant to be played with. And it's very, very unusual to find one in the actual original sealed package.
I think that's something else that kind of gives value to the toys is just sentimental value. You have so many people coming into the store and they want to buy a certain figure. They want to, have that play set that they had when they were a kid but lost or got destroyed or something. And that's also, as collectors, that also gives us a couple of problems running into people who want to sell their items but overprice them simply because they care about them so
Right.
much, when in reality they have the wrong figure or number.
So I guess if you're looking at an age group, I mean, again, I would probably say if you're talking about the original characters, 77 to 83, probably the most nostalgic people we're talking about again are the Gen Xers.
Absolutely.
People like Chuck,
But
and people like Joey.
But even people now, like even kids that are born now, or young adults that are, or becoming adults now that grew up in, say, when the resurgence of Star Wars figures came out in '95 and later, and they've been on the shelf since '95. You have to look at why characters like Darth Vader and Boba Fett and Han Solo are so popular even now. Is they have that longevity. In the early days, Boba Fett was like this mysterious character that they promoted. You could cut out the back of your figures and you could mail it in, and he was a secret bounty hunter.
Right,
and they
not
promoted
even-
him as such. But I mean, what's long lasting is even now Boba Fett is the most popular character. Even when the new Boba Fett figures come out in the toy stores, you seldom see them because everybody buys them up. The vendors will buy all the figures and then resell them at a higher price. Because Boba Fett is that awesome of a figure. The design was perfect, the mystique around the character, and the way they built his character in the films and in the books, and Vader being the Dark Lord that he is. There's so much longevity in the popularity of these characters that I don't care. I think 50 years, 100 years, 200 years from now, people will still love these characters.
All right,
Well,
well,
let's-
let's start with the young guys.
Yeah,
then.
let's
start
do
with the
this.
young guys. Let's start with go ahead, Jeff. I mean,
Well, what I was going to say was let's start off with the youngest of it. That's
Yeah.
going to be Robert, and just who is, based on where you're at right now, who is your favorite action figure? I mean, you look around the store, you have your choice of anything in here. Who is your favorite character?
In the store.
Oh no,
or
your
just it
favorite
can be any.
character,
It can be any character.
I really don't know.
period. Here's your chance at fame,
This
Robert.
is, I mean, there's got to be one figure though, Robert, that I would think that you really probably are either looking for or, that must be your holy. Well, I don't want to get to that next, but
Well, we don't want to say Holy Grail.
yeah, but what is?
when you come into the store and you think at night and you say, "Wow, I really like this figure."
Mm-hmm.
Now I know, depending on the time of the night, it could be Slave Leia,
Yeah.
but
Here we go.
Well, I really can't decide, actually. It's
Okay.
just
Liam,
it's
do you got someone that you look at?
I mean, I'm not really a big collector. But what I wanted to say is to what Chuck was talking about. Star Wars was really not perceived to be a success, or when it was
No,
they weren't expecting it to be a
no,
success.
not at all.
And I mean, just the idea, like technically it was an independent film. Lucas financed it himself, and he had a lot of conflicts with the studio. They were messing with what he was doing when he was doing Apocalypse Now, when he was doing American Graffiti, and it was coming out the same weekend as Smokey and the Bandit. And
Yes.
people were saying, this is not going to succeed at all. And it,
And people went to see Smokey and the Bandit.
yeah, people did.
I saw it.
It's one of my favorite films.
But so a lot of the fact is, like, we're talking about, like, this idea of the action figure, because part of the thing is that nobody thought it was going to be a success, so Lucas retained all the rights to it.
Well,
so
let's-
he had a lot of control
But
over
what?
Let's
Okay,
bring this
let's
back
bring
around.
it back because I mean, what is cool to you guys? What is I mean, okay, then let's go to our generation. Then if we or to
Well,
or but
What I was
go-
going to say is, and I'm sure Robert will agree with this, is a lot of the characters that are popular to this generation are a lot of the characters, the obscure ones, like the expanded universe ones. Like, I remember a few weeks ago, Robert picked out Cade Skywalker as one of the characters, and because he's a really popular character from the comic books and stuff, and that's something that, I mean, when the original Star Wars came out, you just got the basic figures, and so now it's just this radical idea that these characters that never were in a Star Wars movie, they were in a video game or a comic or a book, and now you get those characters, and I think that's a lot of the ones that are going to be valuable, like we're talking about.
That's an excellent perspective.
Like,
That's exactly what I'm looking. Yeah.
Does the
like
expanded
one of the
universe.
most popular characters we have is Revan, who's one of the Sith Lords
Absolutely.
from the Knights of the Old Republic series, and just the figure's rare, but there's so many people who are attached to that character.
Well, I would have to agree with Liam on this. It is really cool how they're starting to make how they're making figures that are just from the comic books and the video games, stuff like that, and some really obscure characters, and it sort of adds a little variety to the whole mix of Star Wars figures.
Now, do you feel as a 14-year-old that they're pandering towards you? Meaning,
Are they? Yeah, go ahead.
do you feel as though that these characters that they're bringing out, because for somebody like myself in my 50s, I don't play video games anymore. I mean, I still enjoy them. I watch them.
I don't do it. I don't either.
And they're very story based. So when you're playing something like Knights of the Old Republic, I mean, and they have a character as extreme and hardcore as Revan, I mean, that's for you guys.
I don't feel as if it's pandering, but
Or maybe just, I mean, but you're a market, I guess, more like a market that they're looking at to sell to. I don't know, maybe pandering's a little
extreme.
hard. Yeah, but
So, well, look at the new Rebels one, and what's happened with that. Here's an example of a figure with the Sabine figure that came out in the 2-pack with she's with this. Who's she with?
She's with a stormtrooper.
With a stormtrooper.
Yeah.
That this thing's already worth $75-$80, and it's not
just
even
came
on,
out.
it's not officially on the market
Well, it's
yet.
because she's awesome.
We ran around an entire day searching for Sabine, and I couldn't find. I went to like 4 different, maybe 4 or 5 big box stores, and I could not find her at all.
Well, can somebody just explain who Sabine is real quick?
Sabine Wren is the female bounty hunter that is part of the Rebels, small Rebels force on Disney XD.
Mandalorian.
She's
Yeah,
a Mandalorian.
Mandalorian.
I think
Yes.
and you're gonna get Star Wars fans who are fans of like the expanded universe that she's a Mandalorian, and that's really cool. But you also have a lot of young girls that this is a cool female character, like what we saw with Ahsoka, and how that's one of the most popular characters.
absolutely.
Well, they're talking that there might be a major twist with the Sabine character.
Yeah, there's
in 7?
well in the
Solo
first
films.
the first spin-off movie, which is directed by Gareth Edwards, it's coming out in 2016. They were auditioning for a female leading role in the
okay.
film, and they cast Felicity Jones, who you might know from The Theory of Everything, in that role. And a lot of people have been talking that it might be Sabine as this character.
What? You're 21, right?
Right.
You can order a beer now and a margarita or whatever at a bar, and
She did that when she was 14.
That's right, she did, wasn't she? But what do you see as a valuable toy, or as what do you value? What do you see?
Just period, not Star Wars related or
I
anything.
mean,
I mean, personally for me, I am a huge Harry Potter fan, and a Doctor Who fan. So anytime like I find something, related to both of those fandoms, I like geek out. And I'm wearing a TARDIS necklace right now, and that's what people just. I'm not really a collector, but.
But you have your favorite
But
doctor.
I have I have all of that. And what's really cool is that everything that I have acquired, over the last couple of years, it's my friends, that are like, oh, it's Christmas, okay, let's get Lainey this, it's always, heartwarming, when you think about me, and it's like, oh, here, let's just get this for her, and that. But back to what Jeff was saying earlier about.
I think the 3 points I'm going through this in my head, and there's really 3 points that we need to hit on in the next 8 minutes or
Yeah.
so, and that's availability, desire, and condition. So we've kind of talked about availability a little bit, starting off in 1977, when we were looking at the New Hope, the original Episode 4 movie. These figures, even if you were around in 77, 78, which I was, and James and Chuck, they were hard to get, and they were kept under lock and key, and people searched for weeks and months and, possibly years to find that one character. So what was a tough character?
It was like the first Cabbage Patch Dolls.
Absolutely. Well, out of the Star Wars characters, say out of the first however many, what was the tough figure?
Vader was tough. This is something I've really never talked about in front of everyone and anyone because no one's really asked the question. But I'll tell you, from my experience, the toughest figures to find were the Jawa and the Stormtrooper.
Wow.
And the reason they were so hard to find, or at least the reason that I've always hold true, is that people bought multiple Stormtroopers to try to recreate some of this epic, scenes in the film where you have a whole bunch of troops lined up. And I remember as a kid, I owned 10 Stormtroopers, 10 Tusken Raiders, and 10 Jawas. So I took basically 9 away from somebody else that might have gotten only one.
So the availability, although it was there, was decreased because the desirability was so increased.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what the
Because
easiest
somebody-
figure was to find?
I don't.
For some reason, what I saw the most out of the original 12 was the Death Squad Commander.
Really?
Yeah, because he wasn't
I
really
just
used in the
guessed.
movie.
Well, he was an odd character.
He wasn't really used in the movie much, so, or at
Also
least
been a
not
good
how they portrayed him in the figure.
Yeah.
So I saw him all over the place.
And that ties into the desire for the different characters. Like we sort of touched on that earlier. Like the characters were hard to find were often the popular characters like Boba Fett and Darth Vader that were, like we're talking about, they're just really cool characters. And
Well, that was the genius behind Boba Fett, is because you make it a mail-away figure.
Absolutely.
So
Oh,
you had to actually cannibalize 4 of your figures to get the Boba Fett figure. So I kept mine in the package. Mine were in the package, and I just cut or my dad did. He took a knife and he cut the top of the bubble, and they were all on my wall. They were all hung up on my wall. And
That sounds like Robert's
That's
room.
Robert's room.
yeah, and I cut the proof of purchase out to get Boba Fett. So, that was genius because I ruined 4 of my figures to do that.
Now, has the actual renaming of Robert's room went through as Star Wars Rockwell Museum? Has
Yeah,
that went through yet,
see
or-
that's what my son's bedroom now. I was in there just the other day, and it's amazing. It's like a museum, and he's got the poster with all the signatures, but Lucas, which is worth several thousand. He's got all these figures all up around his room, and it's beautiful. And I wanted to kind of piggyback. Oh boy, this sounds dirty. I was going to piggyback on Lainey. Let me rephrase that. Okay, but what she was saying is that I guess out of all of us here, Lainey and I are the least Star Wars savvy people here. But I am starting to see, maybe it's because again I'm in the business, and Lainey's probably would say the same thing. But I'm really starting to see the beauty in the work of some of these toys.
I think
I'm not talking Vlix, but like in the new Black series.
like
I think they're
graphics.
and
Right.
yeah. It just really. I'm starting to see Boba Fett is really looking cool to me. Why? Was it because he was rare? I don't know, but he's really looking cool to me right now.
It's because he's the only character to ever escape the Sarlacc pit.
That must be it.
One of the coolest things for me about Star Wars and, working in the store period is seeing how you have all of these different series. You have the Rebel series that, are marketed towards, like the younger kids,
Yep.
12 and under.
Yep.
You have the Black series who is marketed towards, people in their late teens,
more of an
or
adult
more
group.
of an adult kind of
Perfect
thing. Then
answer.
you've got all the sideshow
Perfect.
pieces and the Kotobukias, all of the busts and everything. Those are for more like older collectors who have the
Perfect.
money enough to like buy all of that. It's such an accessible collection to have. You know, it depends on what your budget looks like, and if it's not, you know, it's kind of like mine's, then, you know, you can just go up to like Walgreens and buy, you know, the couple of figures that they have, or you can go online and get all of the, you know, the rare stuff.
I think
She just hit a grand slam,
absolutely.
by the way.
I think a good option for us today is let's do something for the very first time ever. Let's have a 2-part podcast. So since we really haven't finished the whole conversation yet, I think we should take this to episode 8.
This is our version of the Beatles' White Album. We're releasing a second disc. So
Wow.
here we go. Mr. Martin, are you okay with that? Now, during the production of the White Album, you know, he got so pissed off he left. So
that happened toward the end of episode 8.
You know how double
down
records
his-
go. So
Threw down his mic and his
yeah, so
headphones.
George Martin said, "I'm tired of these guys. They got such huge egos."
If all your mics all of a sudden go dead, you'll know why.
Okay, gotcha.
Well, I think what we need to do is carry this on into episode 8, try to hit a little bit more on the exact reasons why these are so valuable. I just thought of another criteria. And not only is it the availability, the desire to have those pieces, and what was the third one? I'm sorry.
Condition?
Oh, the condition. But how about
Sound like Rick Perry all of a sudden. The third
how
one?
about geographic location?
Before the
Because some
internet.
of the rarest figures available to us in the United States were never available in the United States.
Right,
They came
right.
out in other countries.
Or like Blix.
I'm talking Vlix, I'm talking Yak Face, I'm talking some of the rare tri-logo variants.
Or the difference between being a young kid in Iowa or being a young kid that lived, you know, in White Plains, New York.
Absolutely.
A huge difference
Absolutely.
between what you could get for Star Wars figures versus what you could get, you know, in the middle of America.
Well, guys, I hope this has been entertaining for you. This has been episode 7. My name is Jeff.
Robert.
I'm James.
Laney.
Chuck?
Joey?
Liam.
And if you'd like to listen to us, we are now on what is
iTunes.
it? On
iTunes.
On iTunes, so you can subscribe to us on iTunes. And we are taking questions. It's at order66unleashed@yahoo.com. If we read your question online or we answer it for you, you will receive a gift certificate from Order 66 Toys, our home base here. And we thank you very much for listening to our podcast, Sons of the Order.
Thank you so much. May the force be with you.
And also with you.
Hare Krishna.